which doesn't have much, but it must be certain politicians again. Not going to spend the homily. The latest line is the bill which passed the Senate and which is now in the House, care bill, endorsed Catholic Hospital Association. That's the latest. Has a healthcare Catholic Hospital Association. That is true. The only way that the Catholic Association could is if the bishop was acceptable. Together in this. I think that the Senate version health care bill is because there's in there to federal money for there are loopholes in it. The Catholic Hospital issued a hike about and the language Hospital Association is ambiguous. The Catholic Hospital Association letter saying, we endorse this bill. We were making a general to endorse this particular tenet. Well, some politician, that second letter. So it's out there now, endorsed by the Catholic Hospital. So it must be all right. Endorsed by the Association. The bishop spoken clearly, because it does not meet the regard to abortion, to endorsements. It's simply, this is the bill that's present, awaiting representative vote. So I think it's more of people to speak out, their congressmen, and to their senators about, so that there's no mistake in what the position is. George has written on behalf to the Congress that the present doesn't do the job concerned about funded abortion. Okay, is that clear? So you know, because they're at it. But I like it because I watched that from that. Makes me, well, it's another day to do, so let's go do it. I just said, now, great story of prodigal sons. I've told you this before, and who always the parable of the prodigal is the parable of the that indeed what it is. Take a brief look at the first. I talked about how up they go period of infant dependence, during which infantile for their parents. As they hit those, they could be free, independent of their, and then they sing that free I got, that the young man was son, when he ordered, Father, give me my inheritance. He's not supposed to get this. It was a deep insult, a deep act, and a deep act of disobedience. It was like a teenager's freedom. Give out. And he went far away from the Father. He wanted his newfound and freedom. And then he saw that he was filled with emptiness. He was left with no money, nothing that he had done that he was proud of. Everything he did he was ashamed of. And he says, maybe I can go back and have a different kind of a relationship with my Father. And he so longs to get back to his Father's house that he's going to say, I'm not even worthy to enter it. Treat me like one of your hired slaves. The Father pays no attention to the speech that the Son has practiced. He runs out, hugs him, and says, let's celebrate. So that son has passed from infantile obedience and dependence through the phase of autonomy and rebellion to the point of a mature, respectful obedience to the Father and a desire once again to belong in his Father's house. That's the first one. He clearly starts out a snot and clearly does not end up as one. Let's take the second son. Our Holy Father says this morning, the second son is stuck for his whole life in that first stage of development of a little child. He's stuck in a stage of infantile dependence and infantile obedience to his father. But he's getting old. This has lasted. He's never gotten out of that. But he's normal enough that desire for his independence and his desire to feel his freedom is still there. And he's squelched it all his life, and he's in a rage. So the one who has always been with his father, the father says, "You're with me always. Everything I have is yours." What does he do as the other son comes back and doesn't even hope to enter his father's house, wants to say, "Treat me as one of your slaves"? The other one, the young one, is so happy to come home to his father and to enter his father's house. After all these years, the older brother, it's a very important line in the scripture passage, he refused to enter the father's house. And he's been wanting to refuse for years. But he was stuck in infantile rebellion and infantile dependence and infantile obedience. He was stuck there. And now he erupts like a volcano into that phase of, I gotta be free, I gotta be me. And we know that the younger snot is not a snot in the end. We don't know about the older one. We have no information. He refused to enter his father's house. The father says, "You're always with me, and everything I have is yours." But we don't get any story about what the older son said at that point. Whether the older son moved from "I gotta be me, I gotta be free" to a mature respect and obedience to the father like the younger one did. There's a lot to think about here. And when we look at those two sons, lastly, they really represent all of us. In all of us, there is something, because of original sin, that makes us not want to really belong to our Father and live in His house. The way it is if you live in the Father's house, you respect the Father and you play by the Father's rules. That's how it is in human families. That's what you do. The younger son couldn't get far enough from the father, but then he came to his senses. The older one stayed there day in and day out in infantile dependence and infantile obedience, and every year he hated it more and more until he erupted and then refused to enter the Father's house. We're like one or the other. There's something about belonging to the Father and entering His house that we resist. To enter the Father's house is to have total joy. To enter the Father's house is also to carry a total responsibility for doing the Father's work in the world. And there are elements of that responsibility that every one of us rejects. How much do we really want to be in our Father's house? How desperate are we to enter His house? How dedicated are we to belonging to the Father completely in His house? How much do we want to be like Jesus? Remember, it's the same St. Luke who tells this story today that told the story of the disappearance of Jesus from his parents when he was 12 years old. And when they found Jesus in the temple, what did he say? "Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" That's my top priority. I must be in my Father's house. I love you, who are my parents in this world. My mother and my guardian Joseph. I love you very much. But the mission of the Father comes first. And you should have known that I was in my Father's house. That's where I belong, and that's where I want to belong. I hope that all of us, when we renew our baptismal promises at Easter, can say that with great joy. We celebrate Laetare Sunday today, the Sunday of joy, as we anticipate Easter. Our Easter will be joyful if we can say to the world at that great Easter vigil, renewing our baptismal promises, didn't you know, secular world? Didn't you know, world without the presence of God, as you choose to be? Didn't you know that whatever choices you make, O secular world, I have to be in my Father's house? And that's the only place to be, and that's the definition of a happy Easter and of resurrection joy. Praise be Jesus Christ.